Today, for the first time in a while, we are out here on Rancho, and I chose this map to talk about some of the upcoming things for Call of the Wild in the next update. And the first one I just wanted to mention is the backfilling of species to other maps. This is nothing new, we've known about this for a week and a half or so, but just, there's a bunch of old species coming to old maps, and if there's one that fits the most, in my opinion, it's probably Pronghorn to Rancho. They're just gonna fit right in. And honestly, I was surprised they weren't added initially when the map came out, so I'm just excited for that. There's all kinds of things, pheasants to Hirschfelden and Quattro, peccary from this map as well, going to Parque Fernando, which I didn't know that was the thing, but it sort of makes sense because Parque to begin with was sort of a game range, and a bunch of other ones that JaxyBeard listed on a couple of EW streams now, but I think that's really exciting, and it's gonna kind of revitalize some of the old maps. And actually, I do think it's going to be interesting. The other reason for choosing Rancho today just simply came down to the fact that at the moment, it remains the only map that has pheasants, and I still really want to get a rare rooster pheasant, and the fact that we're getting pheasants on 2 other maps now, I think really kind of increases our odds of actually having that happen. So, we shall see if we continue our hunt for a rare pheasant on Rancho or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the fields on Hirschfelden, the fields on Quattro, they may very well become the best pheasant maps, and we'll have to see, but I think the addition of Pronghorn to this map might kind of sway me to keep on coming back here and looking for the pheasant there. It's just gonna, to me, make this map really make more sense. For our purposes out here today, though, pheasants are going to be one of the main things that we'll go after. It would still be really cool to get a rare rooster, just have that off the list and not have to worry about it. And still, I think it's going to be fun to explore all the maps and just kind of learn where some of the species being added are actually going to be at. It may turn some dead areas or parts of maps that weren't as fun to hunt into hotspots. Now, the next thing I wanted to mention really isn't specific to Rancho, but I think it may be the biggest part of this update. The fact that we're going to be able to customize our weapons, and from what was shown on stream, and Jaxy did say that what he was showing was like everything possible. There were certain skins or certain patterns you could use that were specific to maps, so like if you own, say, the Rancho DLC, I think there's like a desert camo that you'd have access to, and similar things like that for every map. But there were a lot of options, and I've always, for me, had specific favorite weapons in the game, and they were generally based on what the weapon looked like. Obviously, there's things that we carry that are kind of like meta weapons, whether that is the 308 AR, back in the day the M1, prior to that the Mosin. There's always something out there that is sort of the favorite weapon to carry. But now, you kind of get to combine the two. You can have that weapon that's maybe the best one to carry. Would have been nice if we didn't miss that pheasant the first time, but we got it. And you also can make it your favorite as far as what it looks like. So I think that's going to be really cool, and I chose a loadout today of weapons that I think I'd like to actually customize. We may be tracking this pheasant for the rest of the video, but we will go and get it and take a look at those weapons. And first off was the 16 gauge, so real quick, the 18 scoring pheasant, we could take a look at that and head back to the other one, but I specifically chose the variation of the 16 gauge that really doesn't pop as much as the others. Of course, the chat's kind of blocking it at the moment, but it's kind of darker in color. There are other variations, obviously, and you could choose those variants, but if there was a gun that doesn't have multiple varieties, you could change it based on the weapon customization. Same thing kind of goes for the 270 Huntsman. I grabbed that one in particular because the 270 Warden has always been my favorite looking weapon in the entire game. It's been that since the very beginning when it became available, and I think it was essentially a base game weapon because it was a reward for having a classic account and then purchasing Call of the Wild. So I've always liked it, but again, I mentioned the M1, the 308. There's just better options for things that cover those classes, and we can now kind of make our 308 or our M1 or whatever 4 to 8 class weapon we choose look something like what the 270 Warden was. Probably not exactly, but close. And I think this will kind of tie everything together that we've talked about so far. There is a kind of model change, and I think texture change as well for the whitetail coming, and I think it's really going to help. Because if there's been one complaint about the models themselves, the antlers are one thing, you can wish they had, you know, more realistic racks. I think 8x8s are far too common in this game, but for me it's always been their faces are just kind of too fat. It just was never quite right. And based on what we've seen, it looks like they're kind of making those faces a little bit more slender. So I think that's going to help. I think that's going to be really good. And we got to see as well the 270 taking out a whitetail. Or did we? We shot that whitetail with the 303, and some of you guys may have picked up on it. The 270 and the 303 are fairly similar, but there is a little bit of a difference. The 270 barrel is a little bit lighter in color, but that's kind of the point. When we have the ability to customize our weapons, we'll be able to make them look like whatever we want, and something like this, where maybe I prefer the look of the 270 Warden. We had the 270 Huntsman today, the carbon stock, but I could make the 303 a camo stock or a wood grain stock or anything like that. I'm just really excited about the potential to do that. And one last thing on that note, Jaxy kind of mentioned as well, maybe that opens up the possibility for future customization in the game. I've always been surprised that character customization never really went anywhere in this game. In Hunter Classic it was a thing, and I just thought that maybe it would come to this game one day, and now that we can sort of customize our weapons to our own personal preferences, maybe one day down the road we can do that with the characters too. This may be the first time I've ever seen whitetail and mule deer feeding in the same place. That's actually pretty cool. A couple of decent bucks as well. Get the 85 to 100 kilo whitetail, and then that mule deer, which is no doubt a level 4. And we may have to alert it to actually get him. We're going to go for that over the whitetail. I think it's a little bit better, though not much comparatively. And again, we'll use the 303. I actually was going to grab the 270 Warden just to kind of get to use that, but we'll stick with the 303 now that we have it in our loadout. Eventually, this guy should stand up. Like, it says he's alert, but he's just continuing through this feeding animation. We could probably get a lung hit, though. Or a heart shot, and not even have to worry about it, so that'll do. And just to wrap up everything from the beginning of the video so far, the last thing that I wanted to basically ask you guys was which of the backfilled species, the species being added to old maps, are you most excited for? Because I think for me it's the pheasants being added to a couple different maps, and maybe the pronghorn coming here to Rancho as well. But there's a whole long list of them, and I think, quite honestly, there's probably something for everybody. And finally, one last thing I wanted to mention in regards to yesterday's EW livestream is the changes to Red Fox. They're getting a little model update as well, and it's kind of similar to what Coyote's got. They're a lot fluffier, they kind of made the faces a bit more realistic, and I just find it interesting because I've always thought the Red Fox models were pretty decent, and I do think what they've done does make them look better. But what's so intriguing about it is, you know, you look at other hunting games Fox models, and I don't think any of them really come close. I've always thought Call of the Wild had the best model, whereas maybe the Elk in Way of the Hunter, I think they were probably a better model than what we have in Call of the Wild. So I thought it was interesting they chose Red Fox, and you know, Coyote never got a great one after they got their little change, but a lot of times it just makes me wonder if a great one may be coming. After the Whitetail got their great ones, they got a little model change when Rancho came out. The Moose obviously had a model change. We have the Great One Moose coming. Black Bear had a model change prior to the Great One Black Bear. And actually Red Deer had a slight change long before Red Deer were made into Great Ones. So I just kind of think it might put Red Fox on Great One watch. I think it would be a unique one. Not a fun one to grind for in any way, shape, or form. But it just kind of got me thinking. I just thought it was an odd one to choose to kind of touch up, when already it was pretty good, but maybe it was just one they felt like they could do better with. Gray Foxes probably were better, and of course Gray Foxes and Red Foxes will both be on that map, so it could be as simple as that, but I wanted to cover that because I thought they looked good, and I just also found it intriguing. And I think finally, that covers everything that I wanted to talk about today from yesterday's stream, and I had mentioned at some point in the last week or so wanting to do a video kind of talking about some of the upcoming stuff with this next update, and I kind of figured this was a good format to do it in, especially following a stream like yesterday's that showed off the incredible new Great One Moose, and I can't wait for that. If there was one Great One that I just felt like really kind of encompasses what a Great One's meant to be, is what they've done with the moose. They've done a fantastic job, but finally now, whatever we are, 8-9 minutes in the video, maybe more, we can just kind of hunt out here on Rancho. And I should also say that I am very excited for New England. I think it's going to be a cool map. I'm not really sure what more there is to cover with it as far as what we know right now. We have the species list and all that out there, but it is kind of using a lot of old species, and I've talked about that on a couple of different occasions. I understand why it's done in order to add some of these new features, and I think that's perfectly fine. But as far as, you know, covering what's there, I think it's going to require getting to be on the map and just experience it. So for now, the hunt for a rare rooster pheasant continues, and we're just going to kind of keep passing through areas where we at least have a shot at encountering pheasants. I'd love to maybe get to run into some of the other species out here on Rancho as well. I think it's the very end of mule deer drink time on this map, so we'll kind of see if we can maybe find some of them other than we had the one feeding earlier. And I think that's the bigger pheasant. We did hit him, but he's going to be grounded. Now, both of them didn't even have a shot at being a gold, so not really a big deal. Just kind of glad to get them both. And we can at least see what we can encounter. It's been a while since we've done any afternoon pheasant hunting, but I am kind of remembering that was one of the better times when we were finding a lot of them. So we'll see how this does. Maybe we can kind of like pass by some of the lakes and potentially see some other stuff too. I mean, I guess that works. Got a pheasant out there next to some fairly decent whitetail. I thought I saw one more rooster. I did. 15 to 18 is kind of the best one, but maybe we'll hit the whitetail, because what I did finally do was grab the 270 Warden just to tie back in with the initial theme. I don't know exactly what's going to be doable with the weapon customization, but it looked like stuff like this could be done. And I'm not gonna lie, there may be a time in the very near future where every single gun we carry looks a lot like this, and I can foresee that causing problems. Typically, I think for the most part now, I have a system with my loadout where the highest caliber weapon's in slot 1, the medium caliber in slot 2, so typically I don't end up grabbing the wrong weapon, but just a simple misclick, and if all the weapons look the same, it might be problematic, so we'll see where that goes. But even still, minor changes, maybe different coloration on the barrel or something could solve that. And I really do like to look at this gun, and I'm kind of hoping we can sort of replicate it. Man, for just a second I thought that was an albino pheasant. It's the same one that we spotted. It's the 15 to 18 rooster, so I kind of want to get it just because we had seen it over there. I think that hit it did actually kill him, and we can go ahead and smoke that one too. So little heavy on the hunting pressure, not going to want to shoot anything else here since we are in multiplayer. But that's the two of them, 15.71 for that. At least we got a gold. And did we claim the whitetail? He had to have been right in here. That's the blood. And in fact, he is laying right up there. So the current plan is to head on up through here. I mean, we can see we have another rooster pheasant track here. May or may not be one that we spotted. And basically, we're going to go to one of my favorite spots from mule deer, this tiny little lake up here. There's actually a fair number of pheasants in this area, so we may have the chance to stumble into another flock or two. And we'll wrap up at the mule deer lake. So it turns out, it's kind of not as great to hunt up here anymore, specifically because bobcats actually are up in this area, and they'll spook the mule deer, so that makes it a little bit tougher. I don't know how we just did that. Maybe spinal cord? I still think there's a chance that we got a lung because we're at such a steep angle being up on this hill. But that's a little bit of a bummer because there are, I mean, a fair number of species out here. There's whitetail, there's coyotes, obviously the bobcats that spook the mule deer, and the mule deer themselves. It's still a good spot, but maybe not as good as it once was. But I do indeed see vital blood. I'm actually quite pleased with that. Let's see what actually happened. It was a hard shot. I feel like we aimed like up here. It's only, I guess, 75 meters beyond the zero range, so maybe it makes sense. Not a bad deal. Pretty good way to wrap up. And as per usual, other than that one random piebald doe on Rancho that we got in single player, I don't know the last time that we actually shot something good out here, but I always enjoy coming out here. The pheasant hunting's fun. There's a diverse amount of species, and as I mentioned all the way back at the beginning, the whole purpose for coming to Rancho today, I think pronghorn being added is really going to make this map a lot of fun, and maybe more stuff like that is going to happen down the road. who knows how many more maps and more species need to be added before more backfilling occurs, but I think it's exciting. Like I said, it's going to revitalize some of these old maps, and I know Rancho's not that old, but it needs a little something, and I think Pronghorn are going to help it out. So again, I wanted to know what you guys think of the backfilling and what species you're most excited for on what map. And I think on that note, that's going to do it for this video. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.